Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the Make It Out Alive broadcast, Sam Wilson. Welcome, folks. Looking forward to the very first episode of the M.O.A. broadcast. We have lots of good information here. First off, though, let's get our papers out of the way. What is this broadcast? What is this program all about? Well, in a manner of speaking, it's about survival, but not just survival like we think of. In the past, we thought of, when we think of survival as going back 20, 30 years, it'd be guys in fatigues with beards and long hair and machine guns and living out in the woods somewhere in a camper or down by the river or whatever. Survival now has become kind of a different thing, at least as far as the focus of this show. We're going to be focused not so much only on wilderness survival, but urban survival and really just the way of living, a prepared way of living, not just off-grid living or homesteading or, preppers, so to speak, but being prepared to deal with whatever life throws you. We live in very wild times. All you have to do is watch the news each day, and we face unprecedented threats and events and just wild. People are crazy. They do wild and crazy things. And, preparedness is not just about having a survival knife or being able to rub two sticks together and make fire in the woods. It's a way of looking at things, what they call situational awareness. That's being aware of what is going on around you and being prepared, really expecting the unexpected, so to speak. And why is this so important? Well, one of the things we see is, especially the younger generation now, people in their teens and even their 20s or 30s, they have become so preoccupied with these cell phones. They have really, anybody that drives around through probably any city in America can drive down the street and you'll see kids or even young adults walking down the street, blind to traffic, looking at their phone and tapping and typing and texting and so forth, completely oblivious to what is going on around them. And one of the more alarming things you see is if you're ever on social media and you see wild and crazy events that you don't really see maybe on the mainstream media, so to speak, people getting attacked or mugged or whatever, they're being attacked violently by someone who may be armed with a gun or a bat or a machete or something. And what do? Instead of running or, defending themselves, they pull their phone out and they start videoing the person. So, and really, in my opinion, you may disagree, but I think the onus is more particularly upon men to make sure they're situationally aware and able to, maybe not just defend against these threats, but be ready in case something happens, whether it's a threat or maybe it's a car accident or being stranded somewhere, changing a tire. A lot of the things that I grew up in rural Missouri, out in the country. These are things that, that we grew up knowing. We were taught by our parents and we were prepared to be able to take care of things. I can't tell you the number of times, especially when I lived in cities like in Portland. I once saw a guy literally abandon his vehicle. He just walked away from it because he had a flat tire. He didn't know what to do and he didn't know who to call. And he walked away from his vehicle. So, that's going to be the focus of the show. Let's get right into a news story to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. Let's see here. We go to the Columbia River Gorge in Oregon, no less, back in 2012. I remember reading this story whenever it came out, and I was just shocked. Fortunately, it doesn't have a bad ending, so we don't have to worry about that. We're not going to use the guy's name. He's probably been embarrassed enough over the years. But I know this area very well. It's in Horsetail Falls, which is near Multnomah Falls. If you ever go out in that part of Oregon, it's only about 35, 40 minutes away from downtown Portland. So it's very convenient. It's an absolutely beautiful set of waterfalls, and there are a number of waterfalls in that area that you can go check out. So let's see. The hiker, a 43-year-old man from Beaverton is right outside Portland, was able to call 911 at about 6:30 p.m., and searchers deployed to the area at about 8:30 p.m. He was found cold but safe at about 1:40 a.m. Friday. So he started getting lost. He tried making multiple calls around 6:30, and they finally got to him at about 1:40 in the morning. So a couple of hours he was out there, 6, 8 hours, whatever, depending on when exactly he got back to his car. Now, here's the problem. If you're not familiar with Oregon, there's a big disparity between the daytime temperature and the nighttime temperature all over Oregon. I'm in the mountains now at about 4,200 feet, but even near Portland, it can be 70, 80 degrees during the day and easily drop down into the high 30s, 40s, or 50s at night, depending on the time of year. There's a big swing in temperature. And if you're not prepared for this, as this guy was not, then it can get dangerous very quickly. So it said he was not prepared to be out overnight in the cold conditions. He had some water but no food and was wearing jeans, a light shirt, light jacket, hat, and a backpack. So this guy made several mistakes already. He wasn't prepared. If you don't know, when you go hiking or backpacking, especially, anytime really, but especially if you're going to be going in some place that's even mildly remote, the first thing you need to do is you need to call or text or let somebody know, preferably 2 people know, what you're going to be doing and how long you're going to be gone. When I do this, I typically let 2 people know. That way, if the first guy fails, somebody else is still there to call in the cavalry if I don't show up. So let's say I'm going backpacking. It's Friday, and I'll be like, all right, I'm going to be gone. Hey, Steve, I'm going to be gone Friday, Saturday. I'm going to be back on Sunday. If you don't hear from me by Sunday at 6 p.m., you call in the cavalry, and I'll even give them the phone number for the local, either the police department or the forestry service or park ranger, whoever's going to be able to take the call on a weekend. And that way they know to start looking, because things can turn really bad. You may be only overdue by a couple of hours, but it may be because you have a broken leg, whatever. So if you don't make it back to your car in time, you want to make sure somebody's there to look for you. So apparently this guy didn't do that. He did not come prepared. The other thing is that particular part of the country is what's known as, the climate there is a temperate rainforest. So things are very wet, and it is almost impossible to get a fire started unless you are really prepared and know what you're doing. The wood that's on the ground is so wet, it'll almost turn to mush whenever you're working. I've got a video I did several years ago about fire starting for camping and backpacking purposes in that exact area within a couple of miles of where this guy got lost. And you can literally see this log that I'm kneeling on. It's just disintegrating underneath me during the course of the video. So if you're going to get a fire going, you're going to need to be prepared with fire starting materials, and you won't be able to use wood off the ground. You got to get something off, like dead standing wood or something off the ground, hanging off a tree or whatever that's had a chance to dry. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Anything on the ground is going to be wet. You may be able to split it and get a fire going, but it's going to be difficult. So he wasn't prepared in that direction. But the most egregious thing is, in my opinion, he didn't have a flashlight, so he was not prepared at all to make a shelter or to be able to navigate in the dark. But this poor guy, so while he was waiting for the rescuers to arrive, I'll just read it. So, the man, he used a lighter to burn his backpack and its contents, as well as his hat, to stay warm while waiting for rescuers, search team members said. Now think about that for a second. You're cold, you're freezing, you're out in the woods with no help. What do? I'm going to take off my hat and my backpack, and I'm going to burn them. Now, I mean, this is to be fair, who knows, maybe he was in contact with them on his cell phone and he knew, hey, they're 30 minutes away. I'm just dying to warm my hands. I don't know. But why? It's hard to imagine in any scenario where it's going to be a good idea to burn your gear to stay. How long is that going to burn for? What? A minute? Maybe 2 or 3 minutes at most, I would imagine. That's hard to believe. But this is the problem. People aren't prepared. They don't know how to do this stuff. And this is what happens. He was at 3,000 feet in elevation, and temperatures were in the low 30s overnight in the area. Let me tell you, man, when you're out in the woods and in that area and everything is cold, everything is wet, and the temperature is dropping rapidly. He doesn't have a flashlight. He can't see what he's doing. He's probably navigating or walking around while holding his lighter. I'm sure it was a bit of a scary thing. So those are the things you need to be doing. You should think about if you're going to go on a trip, a hiking trip, a hunting trip, pretty much any time you step out of civilization, even by a little bit, you need to notify people where you're going to be and let them know the cutoff time. So like what I would do is, if I was going to be done, backpacking, I was going to come back to the trailhead on Sunday, I would say, I would give myself about a 2-hour buffer. That way, if I was running behind or whatever else, if I planned on being back to my car by 4 o'clock, then I would say if you don't hear from me by 6 or 7 o'clock at the latest, you call in the cavalry. Then I would drop a pin at the trailhead so they knew exactly where to find me and, where to send people. Because sometimes some trailheads or some trails will have multiple trailheads and so forth. You want to make sure they know exactly where to go. But then the other thing is you got, even for a day hike, you've got to prepare. And that's things like having a flashlight, being able to start a fire, which doesn't include burning your clothing or gear. That's a really bad idea. Once you've burned your clothing, how are you going to stay warm then, So that is kind of the point of what this show is about and what we're doing here. Now, I don't pretend to be some expert, just so you know some background about me. I am a professional knife maker. I design and build and make custom knives and outdoor gear. I do like to go hiking, fishing quite a bit. Don't do much hunting, but occasionally I will go out and do that. But I like to be on the outdoors a lot. The primary focus of my knife making is I make hollow-handled survival knives. So these obviously lend themselves well to the subject we're talking about. You can put a small kit in the handle. If you don't remember these are like the knives that, Rambo had back in the 80s with the little, watertight compartment. The main difference being, and you can find all this stuff on my website at www.gearconvoy.com. You can kind of see that there's all kinds of outdoor gear. The majority of what I have there is all made, designed, built, and finished here in the U.S. So we try and, put a focus on getting domestic work and labor done using domestic vendors and products and everything else. It's pretty important to us. You get excellent quality control. And if you're really going to bet your life on a piece of gear or on a knife or whatever, you want to know that it is what it says it is. So, that's what we do there. You'll hear me reference and talk about my line of knives and outdoor gear pretty regularly. It's something very important to me. A lot of work and effort goes into making sure that this is the absolute best gear and equipment that I can provide anyone. So that if you do find yourself in a, what the quote unquote survival situation, you don't have to worry, is your gear going to fail you? Is that going to be the problem? So the other part of the thing though is the gear isn't the only thing. And that's really, coming back around here in full circle. That's what it's about, is it's preparedness and as a mindset. So, you can have the best gear in the world, but if you don't know how to use it or you've never taken it out of the package, and we're going to get into this a little later in the broadcast as well, it's not going to do you any good. So you have to, I would rather have experience and the right mindset and a good plan than the best gear in the world. So anyway, that being said, that's kind of some background on me and where I'm coming from. What we're going to talk about next, though, is here in the mountains of Oregon, here at 4,200 feet in Chiloquin, or Chi-Town as they sometimes call it, one of the things we face on a regular basis is power outages, especially in the wintertime. So are you prepared to handle possibly the most important task of the day if the power goes out? And what task would that be? Brewing coffee, of course. How are you going to get up and attack the day and get started without a good cup of coffee? But are you prepared, and do you know how to do this if you wake up and you don't have any power, or are you going to be out of luck? We're going to take a brief break. I'm going to refill my coffee cup, and when we get back, we're going to go ahead and discuss that a little more in depth.
Want to get your business noticed? Sponsor a show on KKFO Gold Country Radio on 103.3 FM and create awareness through on-air announcements, our online stream at goldcountryradio.org, and our podcasts that live on forever. Your message reaches a broad local audience while also targeting listeners who choose to tune in to the shows they love. Plus, we promote your sponsorship across our website and social media. For more information, email goldcountryradio@gmail.com. Call 541-238-6989 or visit goldcountryradio.org. Gold Country Radio, your message heard locally and beyond.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us. Getting back to the show here, where we left off before the break is we were talking about what are you going to do if you wake up. Now, this is a common occurrence, especially out in the country where I live, and especially, or particularly during the wintertime, if the power goes out. Now, the power usually goes out, who knows when, sometime in the middle of the night when you're not ready and expecting it. Now, fortunately, if like I do, if you heat with wood, you're not going to have a problem with the temperature in your home. So you're not going to wake up freezing and wonder what's going on. But that is going to leave you with a bit of a problem when you go to accomplish arguably the most important task of the day, which is going over and starting that coffee maker. Because who is any good without fresh, hot, black coffee? Now, you wake up, there's no coffee. You're already going to be upset because there's no power, right? So you need to have a plan. What you don't want to do is wait until you get up, and if you got to rush out the door, get to work, or if you got kids, get them to school and all this stuff, and you have no idea how to get coffee. If you're like me, I am no good before I have my first pot of coffee. And I wake up, and if there's no coffee and I know I can't get any for a couple of hours, I'm going to be in a very bad mood. So what do? I can tell you what I do, and then, hopefully some of this information is useful to you. No one is trying to say this is revolutionary or, some kind of an amazing new idea, but just simple things that go with the theme of the show, which is preparedness. Not only preparing your gear, but preparing your mind and everything so that when something does not go according to plan, you're ready to go. So let's get right into it. What do? The easiest thing to do is I have one of those Coleman type, I think it is a Coleman actually, one of the 2-burner propane stoves. Now, if you're like most outdoor guys, you probably got a whole, a couple of like those big plastic bins full of your outdoor gear, stoves, flashlights, boots, backpacks, yada, yada, yada. What you don't want to do is leave it in there. I have this one in a cabinet in the kitchen so that it's right there. There's a little one of those little propane, I think it's 16-ounce propane bottles next to it that's ready to go. Want to make sure it's not empty so you don't go to ignite the canister or the cartridge and you'd have no propane. But that accomplishes your energy portion of making coffee, meaning how are you going to get hot water? Now, if you have one of those like a power cell or it's a big block battery, power station, they call them, a whole bunch of different names. You can use those to maybe run, if it's large enough, you can use that to run your coffee maker, but be forewarned, make sure you test it first because the smaller power stations, even up to the size of like a couple of encyclopedias thick, they often will not power coffee making devices or any type of device that heats water because those require a lot of juice. And those battery packs or power cells, they will not power that. So you want to make sure if that's what you're going to rely on, which is fine, those work fine too, that you have that ready and you have the correct size and the correct power level to be able to brew coffee. You may also use a generator. I have a generator as well, but I'm going to be honest, if I wake up and it's the middle of winter and there's several inches or a foot or more of snow, I don't want to have to go outside and get the generator going and then run the cord and all that kind of junk. I don't have it wired directly into my house. So I have to go and get it started and then run a cord and all that kind of junk. I want coffee first thing. And then after I've had that cup of coffee, I'll sort the rest out. So your individual circumstances may vary. You may have a different setup. You need to tailor this approach to that. But enough jabbering. Let's get to it. So I get the Coleman set up. Then you can put whatever kind of pot or vessel you want on that and boil water. That's easy. Anybody can boil water. Now the next step is what are you going to use to actually produce the coffee? Let's see the old list here. I've got these listed in order of preference, the actual coffee device that I'll use. Number one is a product called the AeroPress. Now, I'm not getting paid to promote any of these products, but if you've never used the AeroPress, this is an extremely handy device that will make 1 cup of absolutely deliciously rich coffee at a time. The way it works is it's very similar to a French press. It's a plastic cylinder, about the size of a can of Pringles, only a little bit shorter, and you put a little paper filter in the bottom. You put your coffee grounds in, and then you pour boiling water in there. And you put the top back in to prevent the water from seeping out. If you ever you can watch a video on this on YouTube. There's thousands of videos on how to use the Aero press, AERO press. And you put it in there and put the lid in to keep it from seeping out, and you let the coffee steep for about a minute and a half is what I do. And then you just press it all the way down into your cup, and you've got a hot cup of coffee ready to go. Now, it's very, very similar to a French press because the grounds are steeping in water for a full minute, just like a French press. However, because of the small paper filter, unlike French press coffee, there is next to no sediment in your coffee. It's a very clean, it's a very sharp cup of coffee. So I like it a lot. The only downside is it makes one cup at a time. So if you've got multiple people, or if you're on a time crunch or whatever, that may not be the best solution for you. But it's a great emergency way to make coffee, or any day of the week, really. You can get the little paper filters. I get them off of Amazon, some other off-brand, because they charge, I don't know, some ridiculous price if you buy them directly from the manufacturer. It's just a tiny little piece of paper in the shape of a circle that goes in there. Like I said, you look it up online, you can see what this thing looks like. They're a great little device. Number 2 is the French press. French press is great. If you're not familiar with French press, a coffee press, they've got a number of different names for them. It's a glass vessel that you'll put your grounds in, pour in about 3 or 4 cups of coffee worth of boiling hot water, and then you put the plunger on top of it and let it steep. And after, I usually do about 5.5 minutes or so, then you're going to go ahead and press down on the plunger, and there's a mesh filter that pushes all the coffee grounds to the bottom. And it makes a delicious cup of coffee as well. Very rich, a little bit more sediment than like the AeroPress or a regular drip coffee. So drip coffee is probably not going to work because if your power's out and you don't have the generator going, those devices draw a lot of juice when they have to boil and heat water. So those are 2 great options. The advantage of the French press is you can do enough coffee for 3 or 4 cups or several people, depending on the size of your press, in one shot. The downside to the French press is if you're making coffee for one person and you take your time drinking your coffee, it's getting cool or cold while you're sitting there drinking because there's no heating element going on there. So just be mindful of those limitations. Next, the one that I use, this would be my last resort of the filtered coffee products. You can get these little things at Amazon. The box stores all carry them. It's an individual, like a coffee filter in a little plastic thing that sits on top of your coffee cup. You put the coffee grounds in there and you pour the water through, and they'll either have a paper or a steel mesh filter to keep the grounds from going into your cup. They do a serviceable job. Nowhere near as good and as rich and velvety as like the AeroPress or the French press, but they do a serviceable job, and if you're in an emergency or in a pinch, they will work. And they're fast. Again, these do 1 cup of coffee at a time, but they will work. Finally, the last choice, the bottom of the list, is instant coffee. I have never been a fan of instant coffee. Almost every instant coffee I've ever had, probably every instant coffee that I've ever had, leaves this odd aftertaste in your mouth. You're, sitting there smacking your lips, trying to get rid of this weird aftertaste. There is a good one that I keep for emergencies that I get from Trader Joe's. It has the cream and the sugar powdered versions built into the coffee. So it's not amazing, but it doesn't have that same strong aftertaste, probably because the cream and the sugar are hiding it. So anyway, that's another alternative that you have if you don't want to go the brewing method or whatever else. So that gives you a couple of options. Then once you get your coffee, you're fully caffeinated, and now you can think straight. Your homicidal urges have, somewhat subsided, and you can now see clearly and not see red. Then you can go about attacking the day. But that's the same thing over and over again. It's about preparing beforehand. I got caught myself a couple of months ago. We had a power outage, and I had been using the Coleman stove to cook in the backyard, so it was locked up out back in the shed. So I wake up. I was nice and warm because the fire was going in the wood stove, but now there's no electricity, and I have to get, there was literally over a foot of snow on the ground. So, I got to get enough clothes on and boots to go outside. I put these stupid Crocs on because I was too lazy. So I'm walking in the back. All the snow is getting inside. My feet are freezing. I'm angry. Keep in mind, this has all happened within the first 5 minutes of waking up, but I know I got to get that coffee going. And so I had to go, open the padlocks and all this stuff in the shed to get the stinking stove out. I was a victim of my own poor choices. Didn't have that stove ready. So don't be like me. Make sure you have that stove and a full canister of your fuel inside the house. And that way you're ready to go in the morning. So we're going to move to one other story. I found this one when I was going through the news here. This was, I believe, in late 2024. This one comes to us out of California. And one of the points I wanted to make about the stories in Oregon, we see a lot of these stories come out of Oregon of people getting stranded and needing rescue. Part of the problem, like that Horsetail Falls and these other stories, those locations are so close to the city that a 35, 40-minute drive or less gets you into some beautiful, absolutely lush, amazingly green, outdoors and wilderness areas. It's just beautiful. And I think that deceives people because it's so close to home. They think, okay, I can't go out on a hike and die when I'm 25 minutes from the house. But look at what happened. That guy almost got himself, in the previous story we discussed at Horsetail Falls, that guy almost got himself in seriously deep water, and he was 45 minutes from home or less. So you got to be careful. Preparedness is not just about going out and buying the best gear. That's what we see a lot today in America. Everybody just wants to go to Amazon, just buy me the thing that's going to make me the best and yada, 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 and give it to me. And then I'm going to go back to my phone and watching TV or whatever else. All it takes is a little bit of planning beforehand, and you're going to be much better off than just having a bunch of expensive or good quality gear that's still in its packaging. So anyway, that's the takeaway from that for me. Let's look at these guys. This comes to us from the M.O.A. County Search and Rescue Team in California. They scold a set of hikers who needed assistance after being unable to summit Mount Whitney. Two hikers began their trek on Friday evening with the intent to summit the mountain on Saturday. M.O.A. SAR, Search and Rescue, posted on Facebook. Equipped with 150 pounds of newly purchased gear, so basically they were a walking REI commercial, plus 5 gallons of water. Now, I don't know if that's 5 gallons total, 5 gallons each, but that is an insane amount of water. Now, keep in mind they're going to Mount Whitney. Mount Whitney is about 14,500 or so feet. That's a big trek, and it doesn't sound like these people were experienced. Their gear isn't broken in. It's brand new. So what happened? They were exhausted, and one subject had 2 blisters and a bad headache. M.O.A. SAR wrote, "That sounds like just a regular walk around town for some of us, but okay." They later woke up, so they stopped to camp on the trail at 3 a.m., and I guess they laid down and went to bed. In the middle of their ascent, they decided to take a nap on the trail. They later woke up to snowfall with their shoes full of snow. So clearly, I think it is safe to assume they had no idea what they were doing. And they were going to attempt to summit a 14,500-foot mountain. The exhausted and ill-prepared hikers then called the search and rescue team for assistance. M.O.A. SAR wrote, one hiker reportedly told responders that she had a mass in her brain that is sensitive to barometric pressure. I am not a doctor of any sort, and I don't really even know exactly what's going on here, but if you know you have a mass in your brain that is sensitive to barometric pressure, it may not be a good idea to hike a nearly 15,000-foot mountain. I don't know. Rescue teams mobilized at 10 a.m. Saturday and reached the hikers at 1:40 p.m. Once the pair's shoes had dried and they had rested in the sun, so basically they had themselves a very, very expensive and exhausting picnic, they were able to begin their hike back to the trailhead, accompanied by first responders and another hiker who helped carry some of their gear. So they got somebody else carrying their stuff down for them. Okay, so what do we learn, guys? It's about preparedness. And again, we're going to discuss a lot of different topics from coffee to not just outdoors, but all kinds of things in coming shows. It's a mindset. And, using your gear before you need it, preparing, making sure things are ready, and, being ready, as they said in the old Roadhouse film, expect the unexpected. So we're going to go ahead and call it a wrap there. Make sure you think ahead, and remember, don't wait for an emergency to prepare yourself and your gear. Be ready beforehand. Forewarned is forearmed. Because if you don't make it out alive, you won't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.